In 2011, shortly after the 9/11 attacks, anthrax appeared in the United States postal system. Investigators first became suspicious of the bioterrorism attack when an individual became infected by Bacillus anthracis spores found in a letter the individual had received in the mail. Many more cases began to appear, and it soon became known that the anthrax-coated letters were an intentional attack. These letters were coated in anthrax spores and were intentionally sent through the U.S. postal system by a terrorist group, leading to an outbreak that occurred in multiple states, killing a total of 5 people in 22 total cases. Anthrax as a Biological Weapon by Andrea Bobby Imara. A bioterrorism attack can be defined as the deliberate release of viruses, bacteria, or other agents in order to cause illness or death in people, such as the one that occurred in 2001. These agents are typically found in nature, but it is possible that they could be changed to increase their ability to cause disease, make them resistant to current medicines, or to increase their ability to be spread into the environment. Biological agents can be spread through the air, through water, or in food. Terrorists may use these biological agents because they can be extremely difficult to detect and do not cause illness for several hours to several days. The severity of a threat that a biological agent poses can be categorized based on mortality rate, public disturbance or impact, and ease of manipulation and availability. There are 3 categories, A through C: Category A, Category B, and Category C. Category A included the high priority agents that pose the highest threat. They are easily transmitted from person to person, result in high death rates, and have the potential for major public health impact, might cause public panic and social disruption, requires special action for public health awareness. Category B included the second highest priority. They are moderately easy to spread, moderate illness rates, and low death require specific enhancements of CDC's laboratory capacity and enhanced disease monitoring. Category C include the third highest priority, which encompass emerging pathogens that could be engineered for mass spread in the future. They are easily available, are easily produced and spread, and have the potential for high morbidity and mortality rates and major health impacts. Anthrax is listed as a Category A agent because it poses a great threat to the public and may spread across large areas, reaching a large population, and protection from anthrax requires a great deal of planning.
Early cases of anthrax have appeared as far back as 1491 BC in early Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilizations. The earliest known reference of anthrax appears in the Bible, Exodus chapter 9, verse 3, as the 5th plague of Egypt. This plague was an infectious disease that killed all the cattle in Egypt. Throughout history, it has made its mark and appeared once again in Europe in 1613, causing the Black Bane, killing more than 60,000 people, which becoming the first European pandemic. It occurred to be a threat in industrial countries, causing cutaneous and respiratory outbreaks primarily in the wool, animal hide, and livestock industry. The first microbiology breakthrough in 1850 was made by Pierre Rayer and Casimir Joseph Davaine when they identified small rods in the blood of anthrax-infected sheep. It was not until 1876 when an epidemic in sheep interested Robert Koch to find the cause of anthrax. In 1877, he successfully proved that the bacteria
Bacillus anthracis
caused anthrax. He was able to prove the bacteria as the disease-causing agent by using a series of steps which is now called Koch's postulates. In his experiments, Koch inoculated mice with Bacillus anthracis taken from the spleens of farm animals that had died of anthrax. He found that the mice that were inoculated with the bacteria were killed and died of anthrax, whereas the mice that were inoculated with blood from the spleens of healthy animals did not suffer from the disease. This was confirmation that the disease could be transmitted by means of the blood of infected animals suffering from anthrax. Koch continued his work with anthrax and wanted to confirm that anthrax that had never been in contact with any animal could also cause the disease. Koch isolated the bacteria and grew pure cultures. In observation, he noted that an unfavorable conditions, Bacillus anthracis produced rounded spores inside themselves, allowing them to survive adverse conditions, including an environment with limited to no oxygen. He also noted that in suitable conditions, the bacteria would germinate and give rise to the vegetative bacteria known as Bacillus anthracis again. After growing several generations in pure cultures, Koch was able to prove that the anthrax-causing bacteria could still cause anthrax without having previously been in contact with another animal. Since Robert Koch's work with the bacteria, research continued and has revealed much about its characteristics. Anthrax is an infection caused by the bacteria Bacillus anthracis and is considered a serious pathogen. Bacillus anthracis is most commonly found in soil, where it is easily capable of infecting grazing livestock or wild animals. The bacterium is categorized as a zoonosis, meaning infects domestic and wild animals and secondarily humans. It is a high contagious bacterium, although there are no known cases of human-to-human transmission. Bacillus anthracis is known to have the following characteristics. It's aerobic, meaning oxygen is required for this bacterium to survive, and it is gram-positive, non-motile, and also spore-forming. Bacillus anthracis' ability to make spores is what makes it so difficult to control, and one of the many reasons it is used in biological warfare. In unfavorable conditions, Bacillus anthracis will create spores that allow the bacteria to survive harsh conditions for many decades, until conditions become favorable again for the bacteria to germinate and thrive again. Some of the favorable spore-forming conditions include alkaline soils with a pH greater than 6, high nitrogen levels due to decaying vegetative material, anaerobic conditions, and a temperature higher than 15 degrees Celsius. In humans, natural infection occurs through contact with infected livestock or contaminated animal products. Infection in humans in industrial countries is now rare due to the required occupational vaccines, but still continues to be an issue in underdeveloped countries without these resources. Anthrax is an infection that can occur through 3 methods: cutaneous, respiratory, and gastrointestinal. Cutaneous infections occur through direct contact with Bacillus anthracis endospores that enter lesions in the skin. Historically, it is the most common form of infection. Symptoms start 1 to 7 days after exposure. This form of anthrax infection begins as a papule at the entry site and progresses over several days into a vesicle and then ulcerates. Edema surrounds the lesions and then develops a characteristic black eschar. This form of infection accounts for approximately 95% of all reported human anthrax cases, and only a small percentage leads to death. Fever, malaise, and headache are common symptoms associated with this form of infection. Once the infection becomes systemic, it usually leads to the death of the infected individual. Respiratory infections result from inhalation of Bacillus anthracis spores into the lungs. This form of infection is most commonly used in biological warfare and is the most fatal. Symptoms: systemic infection that results from inhalation has a mortality rate that approaches 100%. It can take anywhere from 1 to 6 days for the spores to germinate into their vegetative state. Once the spores have germinated, they release several toxic substances, causing internal bleeding, swelling, and tissue death into the infected individual. Initial symptoms are vague and flu-like that will progress to hypotension, shock, and massive bacteremia and toxemia. Antibiotic treatment is absolutely necessary early on and should be started during the incubation period. After the acute symptoms have appeared, the antibiotics will kill the bacteria but will not get rid of the toxins that it has released, and the person commonly dies 2 to 3 days from respiratory failure, sepsis, and shock. Gastrointestinal infection is contracted by the consumption of contaminated meat. In industrialized countries, this is a rare case, but there has been few cases reported. In underdeveloped countries, however, ingesting contaminated meat is of greater risk. This form of infection begins as a sore throat or an ulcer in the pharyngeal cavity of the pharynx, eventually leading to neck swelling and fever. Anorexia, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and hemorrhagic diarrhea are also common consequences associated with a gastrointestinal infection by anthrax. This form of infection can eventually become systemic by entering the bloodstream and lead to death. If a person has been exposed, they should seek antibiotic treatment immediately, even before the symptoms appear. For any individual that has been exposed and treatment is delayed, the infection could become fatal because the bacteria will have already produced toxins that cannot be eliminated by the antibiotics. Drugs of choice include ciprofloxacin and deoxycycline. Penicillin can also be used.